Welcome to the ORB radio show, where today we're going to discuss why I came out to the desert, where I live, what's cool about it, and in between I will talk about a diamond in the rough movie. Movies I think maybe you haven't seen that are pretty cool and have some pretty cool messages or some interesting messages. We're going to talk about the end of an empire, Jelly Roll speaking to the Congress about fentanyl. We're going to try to talk a little off-grid, because I live an entirely off-grid lifestyle, and this radio show is being broadcasted to you completely off-grid. So we are going to go back to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the show. So I moved to the desert. I bought a piece of land sight unseen on an online auction website. I'm from Wisconsin, and someone told me about a cool website, and I want to invest some of my money years ago, and I bought a piece of land sight unseen. So I've heard a lot of people in the fringe media talk about how you want to find a sanctuary, a place with like-minded people, an oasis, a utopian society that you set up where there's no police, there's no obstructive outside forces. But I am here to tell you, while I did not believe that that thing existed, it does exist. It exists if it's a piece of land that is landlocked by Native American reservation land in the Southwest, in the desert. Because if an enormous res surrounds your piece of land, then nobody really cares about you. That's the sad truth of it. There's no police here. There's no paramedics. If anything has to happen to you because they don't have jurisdiction in this small place, the Navajo police or whoever they might be, the state police have to come in. There's no building permits because they can't institute anything on you. You're in this small little strange area that's covered by res. So you're not under the reservation's jurisdiction. You're still under the jurisdiction of the state of New Mexico. But everybody's so far away that they can't mess with you. You have to call the sheriff, and it's going to take a while for them to show up, and they usually don't do anything around here. So I've heard people talk about these places you want to find where you can build, nobody's going to mess with you, the cops aren't going to mess with you, you can build your little society in peace. But that kind of thing exists. And I found on accident by buying a piece of land in the desert. The people seem to be usually preppers and doomsday people and Christian extremists, or just people who are hermits. So it's an interesting type of people out here. All the people out here seem to think that the end is nigh, which is interesting. I didn't expect that. I kind of think that because I was raised in a Christian upbringing in a house that was very serious about the Bible. So, of course, I had come to that conclusion long ago. But there's a lot of people out here that think just like that.
Very interesting.
If you want to find a place where you can build, where no one's going to mess with you, if you want to find a place where there's no police, places like this do exist. People in these type of places like to share. And a lady gave me a $150 pair of leather Keen sandals, which I don't wear name brand stuff, but she said, my grandson grew out of these. These look about your size. I'd like you to have them for free. No ulterior motives. So people do this for me, and I help people, and I always try to help them for free. I'm always telling them, no charge. I got you. I can put that part in your car. No big deal. But people always pay me because that's the kind of people they are. No, take this, So we help each other. We're trying to help each other for free. And it's an interesting place like this. I don't think there's a lot of them. But if you're looking for a sanctuary, look in the Southwest. Look in the desert. Maybe even try looking for Native American landlocked land. It'll give you a little warning. But if you're looking for a place, they exist out there. Don't give up. They are out there. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. So let's a little bit about where I'm from, where I'm at, a little bit about my ethos and why I came out here. I was doing a little bit of soul searching, as some of us do when we get later in life, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Career-wise, spiritually-wise, I didn't know what was going on. I was getting into my mid-30s, just like Jesus, and things were starting to get important. Seemed important. Life. What am I going to do? Am I wasting my life? I don't have a child. I'm a wandering, nomadic man. What am I giving to the world? What am I providing? Of course, I was doing a lot of good stuff. I was helping people, but I started to feel a little bit lost. So, I started getting into the Bible. I started getting into different spiritual practices, study. I started to travel for work to places that would house and feed me as a part of the job. We would contract jobs, fishing, oil industry, these things. And it would provide me time to be alone by myself and think a lot. And I had a spiritual revelation one time. I'm not going to talk about it right this second. But what led me out here, what I believe, was God telling me to come out here. And I want you to know and learn a little bit more about me before I share that experience. So, yeah, God kind of led me out here. I'm not going to say he said to come out here, but he led me out here. I do believe that, and I'm at odds with why I was led out here sometimes, to be truthful and to be honest, because it provided a lot of hardship. There's no water out here. There's no electricity. There's no power lines, water lines. If you have to have internet, then you have to get Starlink now, and that's pretty pricey, $150 a month or so. So you got to provide your internet. You got to provide your water. You got to provide your electricity, and you're in the middle of nowhere. So if anything goes wrong, you're kind of very, very far away from the nearest Walmart or any kind of place that you can get help, a shop or anything like that. So, along with all of that off-grid aspect of it, there's a lot of metaphysical anomalies, I guess I'd say, out here. And I don't believe I can't believe that that's necessarily why I was led out here, but it is one of the other aspects of this place. Like just a couple roads down, if you drive down, there's a skinwalker lane. I don't think you're going to find many roads named after skinwalkers, but there's one here. There's banshees that you can hear out here, strange noises in the night, wendigos. There's not a lot of light pollution out here, so if you look up in the sky, you can often see a lot of the stars. But because there's no light pollution, you'll see a lot of things moving around in the sky. If you're open-minded like me, maybe they're government craft, inventions, human inventions even. But you'll see some interesting stuff in the sky. You'll hear some interesting things. You'll meet some interesting people, for sure. And I came out to this place looking for privacy, looking for a sanctuary, somewhere where I could go and keep myself safe. I didn't expect to find a group of people, but I did. I made some good friends here, and I feel like they'd help me almost no matter what. Interesting, beautiful place that I came to. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, but we will be right back in just a second. I said in the beginning that I would talk about some movies that I've found interesting. Sometimes Starlink doesn't work well, or you're on a cloudy day, so you don't have the ability through your batteries in your solar panel to have much internet if you have running Starlink or anything. So if you have lack of internet and you have something small like a laptop or a phone, don't have much power, then you can be stuck on some old movies that you have downloaded. So I have a whole bunch of movies downloaded, and I don't think that some of them a lot of people may not have seen. So I wanted to talk about them. The first one I wanted to discuss was Bridge of Spies. This movie stars Tom Hanks, and it's a slow burn. It's almost like 2.5 hours, so it's not a short movie. And if you're looking for fast, action-paced, and you have a very short attention span, this movie is not for you. But if you like to get into drama movies and really sit there by yourself and turn the volume up and investigate some serious movies, Bridge of Spies is a great one. And it is based on a true story, I do believe. And that's what made it so, this movie, actually, even though it's a slow burn, it kind of moves me to tears. In this movie, it's about a Russian spy that's in America during the Cold War. And Tom Hanks is a lawyer, an American lawyer. And he is called upon to be the lawyer for the spy who was caught during espionage acts in America. And because he's such a great lawyer, he wants to really help this person. He believes in due process and the law.
I'm Irish, you're German, but what makes us both Americans? Just one thing. One. The rule book. We call it the Constitution, and we agree to the rules, and that's what makes us Americans.
And not only does he get this guy's sentence put to 30 years in prison instead of the death sentence, instead of sending this guy to the electric chair, which is pretty huge. He said, yeah, let's hold on to this guy. And his excuse, he really was a great guy, it seemed like in the movie, but his excuse was that, we may have prisoner exchange. They may catch one of our guys, and if we still have this guy alive, we might be able to possibly trade one of our guys for one of their guys. So this movie is about how exactly that happens. And the rest of the movie is about how Tom Hanks then goes and does the prisoner exchange and is the main mediator between the two governments, because the governments can't have that meeting together because it's in the middle of so many things going on in the nuclear conflict with the Cold War. So this movie, when it moved me to tears, and I wondered to myself why this movie, kind of this slow movie, would move me to tears, and I investigated why I would feel so moved by that. I thought it's mostly about how Tom Hanks has this good heart, and it's these two individuals coming together who are essentially going to become friends, but in the world political scene, they should by all means be enemies. So it's really about breaking those barriers, and who we're told is supposed to be our enemy, each of us on an individual basis saying, I'm not going to have an enemy. All men are my friends, and I'm going to treat him like he was my neighbor, regardless of who he is or what's going on in the political scene. Because with so many ethnic cleansings and so many things that go on politically are usually inspired and provoked by invoking an enemy, making another person, another religion, making them the enemy. But if you yourself believe that you have no enemies and that these borders are invisible and that we're all just a race of mankind, that's what I think moved me the most. Tom Hanks goes out on that limb and he's going to help somebody regardless of who they are. And the brotherhood that came about because of it, and the friendship that came about because of it. It's a beautiful story. I've seen it a few times, and this is one of those movies where the more you watch it, the more you see things that you didn't notice before. There's one scene that I hadn't noticed, no matter how many times I had watched this movie. At one part in the movie, Tom Hanks is on the S-Bahn train in Germany, and he's crossing over on the train, crossing the border of West Germany and East Germany, and he sees the Berlin Wall and some people trying to climb over it, and they get shot climbing over it. Some children, some young men get shot climbing over it. And that shocks him. He's seen people get killed. And I never noticed this, but in the end of the movie, you'll see him be on his train in New York City, and he'll be crossing, and he sees some children at the very end. I never noticed this, but he sees some children jumping and hopping like a fence. And it's like the same scene, like where he's on a train and you see people jump a fence. And this time the children were totally safe. They were just jumping into the next backyard. And if you don't really pay attention during the movie, it's easy to miss it. But they're making a correlation between how Tom Hanks was understanding and empathizing, because in Germany it was so dangerous that just taking the train, he was seeing children being murdered over jumping a fence. And when he gets home, the relative safety, because they're talking at this time of how it's so dangerous for Americans, or they're about to get nuked by Russia, and so much danger is being posed. And then he's on the train here, and if we're supposed to be in so much danger, he should be seeing a similar scene, but he doesn't. He sees children jumping that fence and being totally safe while doing so. So he was realizing kind of the hypocrisy in the world that he lived in. Very interesting movie. Check it out. Bridge of Spies. It's not too old, maybe like a decade old or so, but you got to check it out. Great movie. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to the show. I want to talk about the end of an empire.
Oh, yeah.
You know how people like to talk about how
world empires
have a specific lifespan. When we look at previous empires, there's been some great empires in the past. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan. The Spanish Empire was pretty awesome. And look at Spain. It's not much today, politically, powerful-wise. But, they had a big world power going on at the time. So some people like to investigate these different world powers and see whether they have a lifespan, because a lot of them, they're not around anymore. It does seem that world powers seem to have a lifespan, with maybe the Roman Empire being the longest. Well, when you look at the end of these empires, they seem to have things that are similar. And that's what scares people about this American world empire, is that we seem to be following along similar lines of the things that world empires did in the past, right before
they fell.
One thing I thought was interesting that was kind of a sign of the end of an empire is when celebrities are before government officials being chosen to be the spokesman for the people. That's strange. You know, we have senators, congressmen, House of Republicans. We have these different elected positions. And what these people are supposed to be doing and getting paid handsomely for is to be the spokesman in these government positions, making the decisions for us. Going to these governments and saying, hey, this is happening in the nation. We need to pass a bill that stops this from happening. But at the end of an empire, it seems that those elected senators and such are not doing their jobs, or not doing them well, rather, because nobody's taking them seriously and they have to go to people like Jelly Roll, famous musicians. Well, nobody's listening to these people. Let's put one of these musicians or actors or something. They'll know who they are and they'll listen to them. They're not listening to us.
That kind of seems like the end of an empire.
When we're standing on the shoulders of our celebrities and asking them to do the work for us, their jobs are merely to entertain us. They're not supposed to be the spokesman for change. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. You can mill that over in your brain, but we will be right back after just a quick commercial break. I wanted to talk about another Diamond in the Rough movie, and this movie is
Battlefield Earth.
Some people think that this movie is very corny, which it is.
First you show me the god, then we eat.
And in some way, some of these corny movies, if they weren't corny, they wouldn't be good. You know, the lack of seriousness in some of the aspects is what makes them a great movie. It's an old school movie, and this movie is about aliens. It's a sci-fi movie, and it is about a post-apocalyptic world where aliens have come to the Earth in order to harvest their gold, and they destroy almost all of mankind in the process, and then mankind makes an uprising to try to take back the planet. This movie is actually really good. I mean, I know some people are going to say that this movie is bad, but this movie is actually a pretty good, pretty interesting movie. And if you are into any kind of Zecharia Sitchin, any kind of Anunnaki, any Sumerian lore, you'll find this movie interesting because it's like basically telling this story about how aliens were once present on the planet and they were here for the purpose of gold. So that's kind of interesting. It's just kind of a goofy sci-fi movie, but you got to check this movie out because this is one of those sci-fi movies that isn't watched but is kind of saying a lot. If you're much of a Bible reader, the Bible says things will increase as the end draws near. And if you think about increasing, then you think about things speeding up. And when you look at technology, it makes me think of this Bible verse. Technology's increasing at the rapid rate that they are makes me think about this scripture. And fast technology kind of equals fast destruction. If you think about the scripture. And our technology is just zooming at an ever-increasing rate. Our next Diamond in the Rough movie that I want to discuss is Chappie, which is about robotics and AI. Takes place in the South African geographical location instead of in America. But very interesting movie, very cool, I think. But these things are all discussing technology, you know, robotics. Boston Dynamics has some very interesting robotics going on. People have been seeing this for years. There's a lot of different robots out there. Chinese companies right now are coming up with even smaller and more fast-moving and more humanoid-like robots. So there's a lot of robot being developed right now, and there's a lot of artificial intelligence being developed right now. So I think that that's something that people that read the Bible and think about society should really think about deeply, because if somebody does live in the city and these things are brought about, and it says in the Bible they were eating and drinking and they took no note. If you're just living a good life and you're not taking any note of these technological things around you, you may not realize that you're going to be in the movie I, Robot, and then before you know it, there's going to be things surrounded around you that can just take your life over. essentially control you. We think right now the government controls people by means of the military and guns and whatnot, but this is no kind of control compared to the control that can come about by police and military being replaced with robotics. Not only are the robotics much faster and able to catch you and all of that, forget all of that, but when a human being is the person that's coming to arrest you, you can file a lawsuit if that human being does something egregious to you. But can you really file a lawsuit against a robot? Or will anybody really care as much? Because it's not a human being that's committing the act. So it kind of takes some of that humanity out of law enforcement, which is very scary to me. If you watch the movie RoboCop 2014 or something like that, I don't know exactly what, it's the newer iteration of RoboCop, but that's the exact dilemma in that movie. They had to put a human inside it because people said, well, robots won't think with human emotion, so we can't have them doing everything by themselves because they may make some choices that humans wouldn't do, so we gotta have people with them. Unless we have like a robot, human, hybrid cyborg, and then at least we'll have some kind of idea of what it was like to be human, and maybe the choices it will make will be human-like choices.
What's inside? That's what makes you different. See? It's who you really are. Inside. Your soul.
But that's kind of the theme of that movie. And I think that that's kind of the theme of where our society is going to be going with robotic police forces.
Chappie, listen to me, I'm your maker. I brought you into this world.
In the last episode, we're talking about golden domes. We're talking about military and turrets and things to protect our airspace. You know, right now we get to kind of walk around in somewhat peace. But when Chappie comes around, when a robot comes around that has an AI in it or not, things are going to become much different for humanity, I think. I'm not an alarmist when it comes to AI. I think the technology is really, really interesting. I love science and I love technology. I can't lie. But there is a scary aspect of if we just let this thing completely dig its claws in and get its way into our way of living, that might be much harder to get rid of it in the future. Just something that we should think about. I'm going to go to a quick commercial break. The show is almost over. But when we come back, I suppose I'm going to talk about brotherhood.
We're going to talk about brothership when we come back.
Right back from this commercial break.
So the last thing I want to talk about brotherhood. It's one of the most interesting and titillating things to me. I mean, I love off-grid stuff. I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I love camping and taking care of yourself and making fires and making tents. I love all this kind of stuff, but the most interesting thing, I think, when I think deeply about it, is brotherhood. Because if you're just running around by yourself, which I've done, living off the land, that's cool, but people are not really solitary creatures. We're meant to be with other people in a way, and we become a little strange when we're by ourselves for too long. And brotherhood is what my mind keeps coming to. That's why I reach out to my neighborhood. That's why I reach out to all of my neighbors and try to help them make some kind of bond and connection with them. I think because brotherhood is so important to me. And I think it's going to be one of the most important things in the end. Because surviving by yourself will not only be difficult, it will be drastically depressing. But brotherhood allows that to not be so scary. You know, if you were in some type of war in the military and you were sent out all by yourself, that would be rather scary. But when you're sent out with a squad or a group of guys, somehow that kind of stuff becomes a lot less scary. So I suppose I want to end the show with some kind of call to arms. Not arms as in defensive or weaponry or anything like that, but a call to arms as in a call to brotherhood. Because brotherhood isn't necessarily a weapon, but it is very, very, very powerful when we can come together and collaborate with each other so that each of us isn't alone. I'm calling you to those near you. I'm calling you to find an area where you can find people and actually make true friends. Meet people that become like family, people that you can trust, because very soon I think that the world could be working to a position where that could be really, really important. I love all of you guys. I have a big heart, and I want everybody to have a good life. And I believe that that is going to give you the best ability to have not only have a good life but survive the coming
trials and tribulations.
I think that all of you are going to do a lot better if you have somebody by your side. So look for those people, reach out. If you can't find anybody nearby, reach out to the show. If you can find somebody nearby, reach out to those people. Maybe you can become something or somebody that can help other people and find some true sense of purpose in this crazy world that we're living in. Thank you for listening to the ORB radio show. I appreciate it so much. And please like and subscribe to the show, of course. And I will talk to you next time.